Barlinnie, the Big House, Glasgow's most infamous jail. If you grew up in Scotland, you knew the name. Murderers, gangsters, full-blown psychopaths. This was when the worst of the worst ended up. But the prison held more than just hardened criminals. Some prisoners were just wains, kids as young as 6. But behind these walls, that's where the real stories happened. Riots, escapes, brutality. Soon to make way for HMP Glasgow, this is the case of Barlinnie Prison. Glasgow in the 1800s, it was rough. The city was growing fast, industry booming, shipyards cranking, but down in the closes and the tenements, it was a different story. Overpopulation meant families were crammed into single-room flats, no space, no clean water, just trying to survive. And where there's struggle, there's crime, chaos, poverty, disease, and gangs. First the penny mobs came, then the razor gangs. The Billy Boys, the Sand Toy, the Norman Conks, all carving up tough like it was theirs for the taking. The old jails, they were bursting at the seams. Duke Street Prison was overcrowded, and nobody knew what to do with the criminals flooding the streets. So, in 1882, they built something bigger, something tougher. HMP Barlinnie, 5 halls, high walls, hundreds of cells. It was supposed to bring order, but what it brought was something else entirely. Barlinnie was built for just over 1,000 prisoners, but by the 70s and 80s it held more than 1,800. Cells made for one man now held 3, showers ran cold, fights broke out constantly, guards were stretched thin, and trust, there was none. And if you thought the inmates were rough, the guards were no softer. Step out of line, you'll get dragged into a cell. No cameras, no forms, no witnesses. This wasn't correction, it was control. And it didn't stop there.
In the early days, Barlinnie held children. Boys as young as 6, locked up in the juvenile block for petty theft, truancy, or just being poor. They were thrown in with lads twice their age, no education, no future. And then, if you're really unlucky, it's the gallows. You'd meet the likes of hangman Frank McCure. As between 1946 and 1960, Barlinnie had an execution chamber. Small hallway, a rope, trapdoor. See, you didn't do time in Barlinnie, you survived it.
This is the grave area in Barlinnie Prison where the executed prisoners were buried. It started in Barlinnie in 1946 after Duke Street Prison closed down. And the first one was approximately here, which was John Lyons. The next one after him was shortly after him was Carricker, then we came to Caldwell, and the next one after that was Harris. Then we came to this grave here that always seems to be sinking. Robertson, the Glasgow policeman. He killed the wife, knocked her down with his car, and he backed the car over her to make sure that he'd killed her. That's the Glasgow policeman. One occasion when the death watch officers were bringing the prisoner out to take him across into the death cell, he actually broke away and ran along the gallery with his arms strapped behind him. One of the officers died at his feet and brought him down with a rugby tackle. And they picked him up and dragged him along the gallery and got him into the execution chamber, and then he was hanged.
Three prison officers are still being held hostage in the continuing siege at Glasgow's Barlinnie jail.
By the 80s, the cracks were shown, and in 1987, they broke wide open. D-Hall, Barlinnie's roughest wing, erupted into chaos. The prisoners had had enough. Overcrowding abuse. The jail snapped. Fires were lit. Doors barricaded. Hostages taken. And inmates climbed onto the roof, hurling metal and shouting demands. For 5 days straight, they controlled the prison. It was madness, and the nation watched it live as it went up in smoke. It wasn't just a riot, it was a message. When order was finally restored, the prison was damaged, physically and in reputation.
The rooftop siege at Barlinnie Prison in Glasgow has ended.
This protest had become the longest of its type in Scottish prison history. The captured riot shields thrown from the roof after 109 hours signalled the end of the siege.
Arthur Thompson, Glasgow's very own godfather, ran the streets like he owned them. For nearly 3 decades he controlled the city's underworld. From the 1950s through to the early 90s. Loan sharking, protection rackets, tough wars. If you crossed him, you disappeared.
Arthur Thompson Sr. was a key witness at the trial.
The 61-year-old witness, who describes himself as unemployed and on sickness benefit for 2 years, was told by Mr. Finlay it might be suggested he arranged or orchestrated the deaths of Joe Hanlon and Bobby Glover in revenge for his son's death.
Paul Ferris is young enforcer who turned against the Thompson Empire, accused of the murder of Fat Boy Thompson Jr., gun running and gangland assassinations. His trial, the longest in Scottish legal history at that time, 54 days in court, and they walked.
After 24 hours, the jury acquitted Paul Ferris of the murder of Arthur Thompson Jr.
Paul Ferris emerged into the sunlight on the steps of the High Court in Glasgow for the first time since his arrest 6 months ago.
I'm just glad that the jury vindicated me to the champions, and I think basically a public inquiry is in order.
Jimmy Boyle, once top man of the Gorbals and feared all over Glasgow. After beating 2 separate murder charges by the time he was 21, third time wouldn't be so lucky, and in 1967 he was sentenced to life. Whether it's the conviction of innocent men like Joe Steele and T.C. Campbell, who were framed for the Ice Cream War murders, TV shows with Ross Kemp, or Barlinnie's Special Unit, which offered a chance for reform to gangsters and crooks like Jimmy Boyle, who left prison as an artist, an author and symbol of hope. Scott Harrison, 2-time world champion boxer, dominated the ring but couldn't outrun the chaos outside it. Drink and violence landed him in the big house more than once, but I highly doubt he'd have any asshole inside there.
You glance off, you're taking full force, and that's what happened to me. He's going to be caught so cleanly from Harrison. It's all Harrison here. And Robinson offering little in terms of resistance. He's going to have to throw something.
From champion boxers to convicted terrorists like the Lockerbie bomber Abdel Basset al-Megrahi, held in Barlinnie under the weight of one of the darkest chapters in Scotland's history. Barlinnie doesn't just house criminals. It held icons, villains, underdogs, and men who became myths. Now is the end of the line. After over 142 years, Barlinnie's shutting down soon for good. The new place, HMP Glasgow, costing $900 million. It's meant to be the future. More space, more light, better rehab, a fresh take on justice. But here's the thing, you can build new walls, you can fit fancy doors and add more cameras, but if the system stays the same, it'll just be Barlinnie 2.0. Different paint, same story. Subscribe for more stories from behind the walls.